All right, guys, today I'm going to teach you how to take notes, which is something that you've probably done before. Hopefully you've done it before, and you may even think that you're really good at already. But I see a lot of really bad notes. And remember that your interactive notebook is a resource that you can use all year long, anytime you have a test or a quiz. So it really is important to make sure that your notes are strong going in so that that resource is really useful to you. If you're already confident in your note-taking abilities, this may be sort of a refresher course or maybe just a way to make your notes better. Here we go. First thing I want to talk about is taking notes on a video or a lecture, similar to the one that you're watching right now. First of all, don't write down every word. That may sound really obvious, but you'd be amazed at the number of students who furiously scribble down every single thing that the person who is talking is saying. You do want to capture the main ideas. Just like on this PowerPoint that I'm talking over right now, you'll notice that not everything I'm saying is actually written down here. The big ideas are sort of boiled down into these bullet points. And this is something where if you are watching a lecture or listening to a lecture or a video that doesn't have any text on the screen, you really want to make sure that you're listening actively and carefully to try to distill what the main ideas are and summarize them as you go. You also want to organize as you write. You want to make sure that you're creating some sort of structure that makes sense. It's really hard to go back and read notes that are just a total narrative text of what the person has been talking about. So you may want to create an outline or some sort of system that helps you kind of organize what you're hearing. Cornell Notes is something that works well for some people. Outlining other tricks like that will help you make sure that your notes make sense to you later. And then finally, go back and add notes into the margins if you need to. Sometimes in particular in lectures where teachers are talking, they might think of something that relates to a previous point. That means if you're working through your organization and you have your outline, you're going to have to recapture that bit of information elsewhere if you feel like it's important. I'll show you an example in just a second of what that might look like. These are some notes I took at a workshop this past summer, and you can see, you kind of get a sense here of what my organizational style is, but this is also an example of adding some things sort of into the margins here. I've made two notes to myself on this page where I, after writing all this stuff down, based on what the presenter was saying, I then went back and sort of added some other thoughts in two sort of areas. So that's something you can do just to make sure that you're capturing information without breaking your organizational scheme. Okay, secondly, taking notes on the textbook or other reading material. You're often going to have assignments from me where you're going to have to read a section of the textbook and take some notes on it. Now, the mistakes that people make are similar to taking notes in a lecture, and I'm going to show you some examples of good and bad note-taking when it comes to taking notes out of the text. So in order to not write down every word in the textbook, they provide you a really kind of great outline already in the headings and the subheaders. In our textbook, those are the red and the blue, bold-faced, different font headings that start each section. If those are the points of your outline, you're already going to be much more organized. You want to abbreviate as you go. Same goes with taking notes off of a lecture, but sometimes it's harder to do that when you're thinking on your feet. Abbreviate as much as you possibly can, but don't make your abbreviations so cryptic and so unspecific that you're not going to be able to figure out what they mean later. There is such a thing as taking too few notes and filling them with too many abbreviations, and they just won't make sense. And then finally, I think a smart way to go about taking notes out of the textbook is to kind of create a system of symbols, sort of like abbreviations, little drawings that you make to yourself, little arrows or charts or stars or something like that, that helps you organize the information. You already have the outline going because the textbook has kind of set it up like that for you anyway, but if you use something like little arrows or text callouts or underlining or drawing a box around something or a circle around something consistently, that's going to make it much easier for you to find things like key terms or other important information when you go back and you look in your notes later. In case you haven't figured it out, this is the good notes example at this point. And you can see that the other things that I've done in this particular example are added a title to the top of the page and a page number. Remember, those are consistent elements that you're going to have throughout your interactive notebook. And then as you'll see, I'm going through kind of an outline system using the headings and the subheaders that are provided in the textbook, and then just putting one or two sort of descriptive phrases underneath each of those that sum sums up everything that I've read in the textbook. That way you can compress 2 to 3 pages of textbook information to potentially just a single page of notes in your notebook. And that ultimately is the goal. It's sort of a map of the information that you've learned rather than a reproduction of each individual bit of information. Final pro tip for you all is to read, then sort of process what you've read, and then take notes in that order. Read a paragraph, then take notes. Otherwise, you don't really have enough time to absorb the information, and your notes are not going to be as meaningful to you as if you'd taken the time to read first. Same thing with watching a lecture or listening to a lecture. Listen first, jot down maybe some preliminary notes as you go. This is an instance where Cornell notes might be particularly helpful, and then go back and process and flesh out your notes after the lecture is over. Good luck!